Hello, hope you're all doing great. Today I wanted to pick up a very sensitive topic. We've all heard about it, but we generally don't want to talk about it, or we want to push it under the carpet. Let's talk about domestic violence. When we talk about domestic violence, the first thing that comes to our mind is physical abuse. But unfortunately, physical abuse is just one aspect of domestic violence. It also includes any kind of verbal, which includes screaming and bullying or name calling, as well as emotional psychological abuse, which includes hostility, rejection, attack on your self esteem, criticizing your thoughts and your feelings, the sexual abuse, as well as economic abuse, where you refuse to access or prevented from the family income. So these are the other aspects of abuse or domestic violence. But my main concern today is not to just talk about what is domestic abuse or what is domestic violence, but to understand the psychology behind or the mentality of the person who's trying to abuse the other person. But before that, let's talk about a few myths which we have need to break when we talk about domestic violence. Firstly, we all believe that domestic violence only happens to women. But the fact is that 1 out of all 3 women and 1 out of 4 men have been victim of some or the other kind of physical violence throughout their lifetime. In fact, 30 to 50% of transgender people have also experienced some kind of domestic violence in their lifetime. Myth number 2. Drugs, alcohol, stress, and mental illness, they are the causes of domestic violence. Whereas the fact is, while drugs, alcohol, stress, as well as mental illness, they can be factors in an abuser's life, and they can certainly make an abusive situation more complicated. These things actually do not cause domestic violence, they can just aggravate the situation. Myth number 3. Abusers are just out of control and they need anger management. Unfortunately, abusers use many deliberate tactics to maintain power and control in a relationship. And sometimes these tactics can include physical violence and aggression. But there are many other ways that the control is established. Myth number 4. Domestic violence is always physical abuse, which I have just clarified. And next is myth is that if a victim doesn't leave, it must not be that bad or they are okay with how they are being treated. The biggest myth which needs to be broken. Leaving an abusive relationship is extremely difficult. On an average, a victim would try at least 7 to 8 times before they can actually leave successfully. And some of the things that abusers do to make leaving hard can include financial dependence as well as children or a coercion tool, making threats to the violence or violent attacks or legal retaliation, or using the court system to keep the control over the victim. And the major myth. Many a times people feel, why are the person, the victim, not able to come out of the domestic violence cycle or the domestic violent relationship? Why is it that people still want to stick with their abusers? So let's talk about the cycle of domestic violence. Firstly, the tension is built up, or we call it the tension building stage. The cycle begins with a build up, the sense that something is not right, danger is looming. As the tension increases, there's a breakdown of communication and the victim is fearful and just wants to pacify the abuser. Second stage comes as the incident or the explosion. This primarily comprises of the chaos, accusations, blaming, name calling, and emotional or physical abuse. So, next stage is the reconciliation stage. The abuser apologizes and is just full of remorse that whatever has happened was not his intention. Promises are made that things are just going to change and justified that the explosion was a sort of necessary thing, but it won't be happening again. Also, that after all, it was not as bad as the victim claims it to be. And last comes the honeymoon stage. There's a period of peace, the calm time. Nothing has changed, nothing has learned. And before long, the build up, the cycle has again started. And eventually, very soon, the incident or the next explosion occurs. So, generally, what happens is the victim feels that probably this time the transformation has come and the abuser is not going to repeat his or her act again. But unfortunately, we need to understand it's a cycle, it's a vicious cycle which never ends. It's a temperament of the abuser, and we need to be careful. Remember, you just cannot decide to be a victim, but at least you can decide to be a survivor. Wish you all the best and happy healing. Never forget to get in touch with a therapist in case you're thinking to come out of this cycle. Wish you all the best. Let's understand the psychology of an abuser. We need to understand that abusive relations, they don't just happen. Abusers use the tactics to get what they want, and these tactics, they form a pattern which is actually universal. The first stage is called grooming. That is actually a scripted behavior with a pattern. It's about saying or doing things to lure someone, to inspire trust, to intensify the emotional attachment, and to increase their control. In simple words, the entire strategy includes three things: too much, too soon, transforming. Too much. Everything is just over the top. Too many compliments, too many gifts, too many promises. Something to just sweep you off your feet like a fairy tale. Too soon. You have yet not thought about your future, but this person will too soon claim you to be their soulmate or to be their partner or a spouse. You are mine now. That feeling of possessiveness too soon from no one but in your life, your abuser wants to fit in as all over with the plans for future. Transforming. You would be forced to leave all that makes you you. Your abuser becomes your unsolicited advisor who would comment on your taste, your belief, your career, your personal style immediately without you realizing that you are losing your real identity. Few more tactics which include is the strategy called you and me against the world. Your abuser would actually try to make you convinced that he or she is totally in love with you and you need to be sharing each and everything with them. The first thing is sharing your secrets. You would think that probably this person is sharing his or her secrets, so he's trying to have a more intimate and a more clear relationship with you, a close one. But the fact is, the more this person tries to share his or her secrets, the more is the intention that the bond, you would feel that your bond is being strengthened, whereas you would not realize that you're actually giving the control to someone else. Joined at the hip, you just become inseparable. You're not permitted your space without you realizing it also. Your abuser makes sure that the two of you go together everywhere. Your total focus, your time, your priorities, it's all connected with the abuser. Isolation, to gain control with you. He will isolate you from your loved ones, make you dependent. All your relations would be criticized and ruined to the extent that you start questioning their motives. You shall be convinced that it's only your abuser whom you really have. So you would more be in touch with him or her and try to talk out each and everything. But my friends, be aware, it's a trap and you need to get out of it before it's too late and you just don't know how to get out of it again. Few ways of dealing with abuse. Set your boundaries. Educate yourself on abuse. Reaching out to a therapist or a psychologist. Telling your loved ones what's happening. Discreetly documenting everything that's happening. Create an exit plan.